Okay.
Hi, welcome to our
Hi.
caregiving community. Talking with Burnard today, a good friend. Don't see her often, but we are simpatico. And she has so much to share about marriage, children, grandchildren, and just life as a caregiver also. So let's get started. Hi, Ann. Welcome.
Hi, Kanell.
I was thinking about maybe just to start off is just tell us a little bit about your background, like, childhood, then maybe teen, just to get a picture.
Okay. Well, I was raised in a small town, St. Helens. And at that time, there was only 5,000 people in the town. It's huge now compared to when I lived there. But we lived on a farm. We had 10 acres. There's 6 of us siblings. And so there was a household of 8. My dad worked for the post office for 30 years. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until my youngest brother started school. And then she worked for a paper company that made envelopes for years. She did that. And we went to Catholic school. I was raised
What?
Catholic. Yeah. My sister says we're like Jews. Once you're a Jew, you're always a Jew. Once you're a Catholic, you're always a Catholic.
I hear you.
So yeah, so I was raised in the church. I went to Catholic school for 6 years. And then at that time, that was the end of it, only went 1 through 6. And so we went to the public school after that. I graduated from St. Helens in 1975. I wasn't really active. I mean, I did stuff at school, but I wasn't, I was in German club. I took German because that's my ancestry. I couldn't tell you any words anymore except Willkommen, which means welcome.
That's a
my
good one.
my grandfather used to speak German to me, and my dad's dad. And let's see what else. Then after I graduated from high school, I didn't go to college. I just worked jobs. I worked in retail for a while. I worked at a bank for a while. I worked in a grocery store. I just kind of, and that was how I grew up. All my siblings I have 2 brothers that are half brothers. They're the oldest. Their mom left, and my dad and my mom raised them with us, but we all grew up together in the same house. I didn't know any different. I knew they were my half brothers, but we all had the same mom and
Are
dad.
they your half brothers? I don't get it.
They were my dad's from his first marriage.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
so
And then his
have-
wife left, and then he raised the boys. Yeah.
gotcha.
But he married my mom, and they lived with us their whole lives, so there was, and where was I going with that? Anyway,
You have 3 other than you.
and my sister, and then I have 2 younger brothers. So there's 2 older brothers, me and my sister, and my 2 younger brothers. And my sister and I and my 2 younger brothers were still really tight. The 4 of us do a lot of stuff together. My 2 older brothers, my oldest brother lives in Texas, and my other brother lives in Rainier, and he's gone through he's an addict. And he's distanced himself from us, and that's his choice because he's always invited in. He knows that. But the last time I saw him, my brother was here from Texas around New Year. His daughter and him came up for a visit, and I saw my brother, the addict, at that time, because him and my older brother, since they're full-blood siblings or whatever you want to call, they've stayed in tight. They stay in touch a lot,
Good.
and so he visited with him with us, and I hadn't seen him for years, and I've talked to him on the phone, whatnot, but not in person, and I was shocked. He was always the best looking one of the family. He's looking very old, very thin, bent over, and just, it was sad. I was sad to see him like that. Anyway, so my sister is my best friend, and she always has been. Everybody says, sibling rivalry. We never had that. We've always been tight all of our lives. She's always been my best friend, still is. And
What is like your favorite childhood memory? Before you were a teenager, just maybe with who were you closer to, your dad or your mom, or was it the same?
My mom. My dad was, I loved my dad. He was German Catholic. So there was the respect thing. in fact, we talked about this at Bible study the other day, how some people call God daddy. And I said, I just don't feel like that's enough. You know, it's either dad or father. And that's how I saw my dad until I became an adult. And then at that time, you know, my mom passed away when I was 35. And so I was closer to my dad after, I mean, we became pretty close. And, but growing up, you know, my dad was I'm going to tell your father if you don't behave. My mom was the day to day, but my dad was the one that, and, you know, actually I can remember twice in my life being spanked by my father, and he sat us down and he told us what we did wrong and we talked about it. And then it was like one swat on the butt, you know, like that. But my mom was the day to day, and she'd never hit us or anything, but, you know, you're grounded, go sit in the corner, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. But my favorite childhood memory, I don't know. I'm trying to think living on the farm, you know, we lived out in the country, we had 10 acres and there was a lot of exploring, and we had creeks and woods and, you know, all of that, and running around with my siblings. That was a really fun time. I really liked that. And we had neighbor kids that we were close to. And so we would all hang out and make mud pies, and we'd build forts in the woods, and we would climb trees and, you know,
Those
all
are
that
great
stuff.
memories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Vin, you're a teenager, and I know you got married, but I don't know when or any of that.
Okay. Well, actually, I've been married 3 times. I didn't know you knew that. The first time I got married, I was 18. I was out of high school for 20 days and we got married. And that lasted about a year.
Then
And
was he in high school too, or was
he was 2 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was older. Yeah. And we started dating when I was 16.
Okay.
And then I met him at a friend's wedding. I was at a wedding with my parents and he was there, and I knew of him, but we weren't really, you know, because he was older. He was already out of school. And so we started hanging around, and I was friends with his sisters, you know, and that kind of thing. And then we got married, and it just was, I should have never done it. I mean, you know, and he was a good man and all that, but we just didn't want, you know, he drank a lot, and it got to be where, you know, it was always a party, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with this life. I don't want to be here anymore. And I left, and he wasn't very happy with me, but he didn't do any, I mean, it was just, he let me go. It wasn't, yes. And then I met my second husband at a New Year's party, and we got married when I was 23. And then we had 2 sons together, which I don't know if you knew that. And my youngest son my husband ran over him in our driveway and he was killed.
What?
Yeah. His name was Joel, and he was 18 months old. And him and my son Clayton were outside playing, and my husband had a log truck, and my son ran in front of him and he didn't even see him. Anyway.
How old was Clayton then?
3. Yeah, 3. And he was standing right there. I was in the house and I was folding laundry in our bedroom, and I heard Clayton screaming. And that's what made me run outside and called 911, but it was too late. It was instant. And so, and that was kind of the beginning of the end of us, because Tom was always my first husband, or Tom, he was my second husband. He was a charmer, but he was controlling, and he was always, is that what you're going to wear today? Don't you think you'd look better if you lost some weight? You know, and well, I'm going out with my girlfriends for dinner tonight. Well, if you do that, all your stuff's going to be sitting on the front porch when you get home, you know, that kind of thing. And so after our son died, he became worse, became angry, told me it was God's fault. And if there was a God,
talking out of his pain also.
Yeah. And then it just got to the point where he became emotionally abusive and a little bit physical, not, you know, just like grabbing and shaking and pulling my hair, and he never hit me, you know, but it was enough but I could just see the anger, and I could see it was escalating, and I just decided I was going to leave before it got out of control. And so,
Wow. That took a lot of courage.
it was hard. I took Clayton. Clayton was mad at me, told me I lied to him because I moved out my stuff out of the house, and then I brought Clayton over. He went with friends, and we sat on the front porch and ate popsicles. And I told him, because he was like, I don't know how old was Clayton then. He was in first grade, just finishing first grade.
Years. You stayed a few years after that.
After, yeah, yeah. Well, we tried to,
right, sure.
Yeah. And
what were you feeling at the moment? Like, I mean, not the moment, but I mean, that affects your whole life in a way.
yeah.
How did you get, I don't think you get past the grief probably.
What happened?
What?
3 days after Joel died, God sent me a vision. And that's what, yep, it was, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
It was like I was asleep and there was all this light, and God just came to me and said, he's with me and he's safe here. And so that's what really started me going back to church. And because I felt like he was drawing me back, and
that's funny that you said the light, because with my mom's second husband, it was when he died, it was very on her, just, suppressive. And she said one night, and she said, I don't know what happened, but there's this huge light in my room, and she was already following him, but she said it all lifted and could move on some,
Yeah. And that's how I felt too. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I've never experienced anything like that before or since. It was just I just felt like he was bringing me peace. You know what I mean?
For you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
he sees you, he hears you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Jeez, Ann.
So, anyway, then when Clayton, Clayton was in first grade then. And when he finished school, we moved to Forest Grove. And that's when I started working for Jack. That was my third husband.
When he finished school completely?
Clayton? No, he was in first grade.
Oh.
And we stayed in Vernonia. I moved just into town when I left Tom. And because we were living in Vernonia then.
You were in Vernonia?
What?
You didn't know Vernonia? That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Clayton's dad was from Vernonia. And so like I said, we met at a New Year's party and we started dating, and then we got married and lived in Vernonia. And then I lived there for 15 years. And then
was Clayton back and forth then with you
guys? And so Tom had been married before me, and he had 2 older children, and they're 12 years older than Clayton. They're 9 months apart, Tom's other 2 kids.
Wow.
I know.
I'm
9
sorry.
months and 3 weeks. I know. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, they're great people. I love them. But so Clayton, he would spend every other weekend with his dad. And so he kind of grew up out there. So he knew all of the people, and he had all of his friends. And then when Clayton went to high school, he actually went and lived with his dad because he wanted to go to high school in Vernonia, which was fine with me. I was okay with that. But anyway, then when he finished his first grade, we moved into Forest Grove because that's where my job was. And so.
And you went to work for Jack?
I was working for Jack when I was still married to Tom. Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
No,
wow.
But toward the end of at the end of our marriage was when I was working at US Bank, and one of the girls that worked there, Jack took, he had a sawmill, and then he went off on a side to a lumber distribution yard. And so when he sold the sawmill but kept the distribution yard, and when he first started up the distribution yard, one of the girls that worked at the bank with me, she went to work for Jack, and she was like running the office. And then as they grew, they needed more people. So she asked me if I wanted to come to work for Jack. And Jack, there was only 2 of them working there. There was Jack and another guy named Al. and they did all the sales and everything. And
Oh.
they had a yard crew that they would, load the trucks and whatever. But
He was very
then,
successful.
huh?
Jack was very successful. I know.
Yes, yes. And so then I went to work for Jack, but that was at the end of our marriage, when I started working for Jack. And then Jack was going through a divorce when I first met him. And
Okay.
and then after all of our stuff was final, both of us, we're just, and I was his like admin in the office, and the other girl was working for the other guy. And one day he asked me to go out to lunch, and I'm like, okay. So it was actually like a
Were you
business.
intrigued already, or kind of with him? Or
What?
were you intrigued by him already?
Yeah,
or-
I mean, because he was super smart, just his, I don't know if you know this, he has a PhD in chemistry from Cornell University.
No,
Yeah.
did not.
Yeah. So, and just, us talking and getting to know each other and all of that. And one day it was a lunch meeting with a client or another subsidiary, anyway, this other person, business meeting. And so I went because Jack and I had talked before we went, and we had all this agenda that we wanted to talk about during the meeting and everything. And so we met the guy at a restaurant, and we had a lunch meeting, and we went through all the stuff. And when we came back to the car, and he opened the door for me and he kissed me, and he's like,
Whoa!
I know. And he's like, but we liked each other. It was like that, and he said, I wasn't sure if you were going to like that or if you were going to slap me. Like, so anyway, then we just, after that, we just dated and got married, and then we had Bill, and then Jack had a son from his first marriage too. So yeah, anyway, so that's my life with my husband.
Wow. So tell us what Jack was like before the caregiving began.
Well, he was very, what
was you guys' life like, your marriage?
Well, we got married. We went on our honeymoon to Hawaii, and we bought a timeshare. And so every year we went, we were married for 28 years. For 25 years, when Jack couldn't travel anymore, we sold it because he got to the point where he couldn't, in his physical, he couldn't travel anymore. So, but we probably went 20 times in the 25, and we had 2 weeks a year that we were there. So we did that. We went to Mexico a couple times. So we like to travel vacation. Jack liked to relax, just his thing was, well, what do you want to do when we get there? I want to lay on the beach. Okay, well, we did that a lot. We ate a lot of food. Jack was a fisherman. He loved to fish. That was a big thing for him. And he was a duck hunter, and he hunted ducks. He worked hard. He worked almost 6 days a week, almost the whole time we were married, just because he was the owner, president, manager of the place he worked. And so that was a lot. During good times, he didn't have to work as much, but in the lumber market, there was a lot of ups and downs, it goes with the economy. Yeah. And so, but he was a good provider. I mean, when we started out, it was a little rough. He was paying child support and alimony, and that was pretty steep. And then, but I never felt like we were poor. We've had enough. We didn't have anything. As years went on and he became more successful, we did have more. But he was a good father, a really good father, loved the kids. That was a big part of his thing, and all the nieces and nephews. Christmas was a big deal. He loved the kids, and the grandkids. When the grandkids came, that was awesome. Yes. And
I remember him as being, I only met him a few times really, but as being very unassuming. I mean, we didn't know he had the chemistry PhDs and all that.
Yeah.
But he was very unassuming,
Yeah. He was very conservative and just pretty chill. It was like he didn't really get upset about a lot of things, and and we never fought, we never quarreled. He would
really.
well, we would
How did that-
disagree on, well, I think, because like I said, he was really laid back, and just, he kind of let me run the house. His thing
Okay.
was the business and I was the house. And when we did fight, I mean, like, I'm a yeller and Jack is a non-yeller. And so his thing would be the silent treatment, which to me, that was almost, oh, come on, fight with me.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But, we didn't fight very often, very
Yeah.
often, because I mean, we would talk about stuff if we would, if there was a disagreement, okay.
Mhm.
And then, we'd both try to see each other's side, and then,
Wow.
yeah. So,
Did you always live in the brick house with him or somewhere other
yes,
place?
he actually had that house when I met him. Yeah,
Oh, gorgeous.
yeah.
Love
And then we did a lot of remodel on it as the years. It was built in 1950, and when Jack first moved in there, it still had all the original stuff. And so as time went on, we upgraded, did a lot of things to it. Yeah.
And you entertained quite a bit, it seems
We
like.
did.
Yes?
Jack liked to entertain. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We did that. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Nice.
yeah. Yeah.
So then, kind of you were married, what did you say, 28 years? Well, how many?
28 years.
28 years.
28. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so tell us about when the caregiving kind of started, or like, where are we going?
Well, Jack, let me think, in 2010, they closed his business. They went bankrupt during that
Okay. Mhm.
when the whole housing market fell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And it was really hard on Jack. He was diabetic, and he was first diagnosed probably when he was in his mid 50s. And,
Okay.
he controlled it with diet and some meds and different things. During the time when his business went out, he was very stressed, and it became worse. His blood pressure was through the roof, all those kinds of things.
Hey,
And
how much age difference was there with you guys?
they're 15 years. He's
Oh, okay.
15 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so when in 2011, he went to the doctor, and his creatinine levels were off the chart. So he referred him to a nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor. And then after the nephrologist said, okay, I want you to come back in 3 months and we're going to check this again. And at that time, Jack came in and he goes, wow, you're looking pretty bad, because his skin had turned yellow. And
Oh,
so
wow.
he said, I want you to go today, and I want you to have a blood test. He sent us to this place, and he goes, and I want you to do a 24-hour urine sample. And that was on a Thursday. And he called us on Friday. I want you to come in on Monday. We're going to build a fistula, and we're going to start you on dialysis on Monday. So they put a catheter into his heart, and then they built the vein in his arm, and then they had to wait for the vein to heal before they could actually access it, because what they do is they basically make an artery so they can access it. So then he started dialysis in 2011. And so that was only a year after he retired. And so that kind of changed everything for us, because at that time you're going 3 times a week for 4 hours a day. And
Wow, that
lot.
takes a lot of time.
It was
So
a
did
lot.
you go with him, or could you
Well,
do it?
well, we did it. At first he did in center for 2 years, and then we did home for 5 years. And so, and that was a lot, the home thing, because
What was it like at home then? I don't know anything about the dialysis.
so basically you have, you're washing your blood. Okay. So you have this solution, and it runs through this whole heater thing, and then you have an in and an out. So you have 2 needles in your arm at one time, and they're hooked up to all this stuff, and they're putting the solution through, washing your blood, and sending it back in. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so did he always have those in his arm then?
Yes.
Yes, okay, gotcha.
Well,
Port.
when they first started, they had a catheter in his chest because they had, when they built the fistula, they're building a vein. So they have to let it heal and become
Gotcha.
strong enough that it's gonna make the blood flow enough that it can actually do the dialysis. And
Gotcha.
so, um,
How many
but it-
times do you do that at home then? Those
6
years?
days a week,
Once a day.
once a day for 6 days a week.
How long does it take to do it?
Well,
home.
it's here's the thing they told us. Okay. So it's going to be easier for you to do at home. He's going to feel better. It's going to take less time. That was a lie because it, well, okay. So you set up your machine, you have to let it go through this whole process of clearing all these, you know, what do you want to call them? Like, it goes through this whole clearance check to make sure everything's up and
sure.
running. And that
Okay.
takes a half an hour before you even start the dialysis. So then you
Okay,
do the dialysis and you run for like 2.5 hours. Well, every half hour, the machine goes way down. You have to write down his blood pressure. You have to write down what the machine says. You have to write down all these different things. Then it goes back up. And so that took like 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on his clearance level. And because Jack was a lot, took a little bit longer. And then at the end, then you rinse back all the blood, then you clean up all the mess, and it wasn't anything. And it's 6 days a week instead of just 3.
that's all
Yeah.
you did? Did you do other things? I mean,
Not
that'd be
very
hard.
much. Yeah, we
Could
did
he still get around? Could he still
yeah,
walk?
at that time he was still walking. And when he did the dialysis in center, when he first started, he was driving himself there
Oh,
to
wow.
the, yeah. And then when we were doing the home, after we were doing it for 5 years, his nephrologist said, why don't you come back in center for a while and take a break? Well, the thing was that we had moved. We didn't have as much room here as we did at the other house. At the other house, I had a whole walk-in closet full of supplies, and that's what you had to have to keep. And it was on me to order all the supplies all the time, and they would bring them to the house, they would deliver. But it was, and then I even had to do draw blood, and we sent it into the lab once a month, and the FedEx guy came and picked it up off our porch, and it was a lot. It was really a lot.
You were made for this.
Well,
Your personality was made for this.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you're like, no.
I know. Well, when you do the home dialysis, you have to have 2 people. You have to have a partner in order to do it. So
I know,
like
but kudos to you.
it was me. Yeah. And so after 5 years, the nephrologist said, why don't you guys come in center and just take a break? And when we started going back, we're like, wow, this is so much easier. So we just decided, I just gave up all the home stuff and we just went back to doing it in center. So yeah.
Good.
And
Did you do it locally or did you do it in Portland?
we did locally. We right here at the Forest Grove Hospital, in the back of the Rains dialysis clinic. And then they built that brand new one right next door to it, where that is now. It's kind of behind, is that what's Jack in the Box on there?
Yeah.
Where on Maple Street? Yeah. It's right next to it's a really nice place. Jack probably was there for a couple years before he passed away, and it was a lovely new facility. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what kept you going during that time? I mean, that's a lot, and your life totally took a 180, really.
Yeah.
How did you guys maneuver that even together, or what did you miss, or
Well, I was talking to my daughter-in-law about this yesterday, and she goes, the way I explained it, we were talking, and she goes, it's like having a kid where because it wasn't like what happened with Phil. It wasn't like overnight this happened, right?
Gotcha.
It was like you're having this baby and it's growing and it's growing. And as it goes along, like first he started walking with a cane, then he went to the walker. And then he went to the wheelchair. And as he did these things, okay, so now we need to change this in our house. And now we need to change this. And now we need to do this different than we did that. And because it was a really slow progression from where he started to where he ended, we were able to adapt as we went along the way. And we've had people come, like when he came home, he was in a rehab center. He had diverticulitis, and they ended up doing an ostomy. But when he was in the hospital, okay, so he goes in there and he's got all this going on. and they know he has an infection. And so they're doing the antibiotics, and well, we're hoping in 5 days he can just go home and we can Well, that didn't happen, and they ended up doing the ostomy. And is that what it's called? Where
What
they
is it? I don't even know
where
what
they
it is.
cut the hole in the side of you, and it's
Oh,
all
okay.
your, is that an ostomy? An
I-
ostomy bag, I know what,
I don't
anyway.
know.
But he ended up being in the hospital for 10 days flat on his back, and he was already barely walking. And by the time he left the hospital, he couldn't even sit up. And so he ended up in a rehab center for a month where they taught him how to, because I said he has to be able to, he was in the wheelchair, but at that time he could stand and transfer from the bed to the
Yeah,
wheelchair and all
and
that.
he was a tall guy and big guy.
Yeah, a big guy. And so I said, he has to be able to do that before he can come home, because I don't have any way to do anything else with him. And so he spent 30 days there, and then they came to our house to see if I could handle him at home. And they're like, wow, you guys are really set up here, because, and I'm like, because we've been doing it for years and it's been a
Right.
slow transition. It's because a lot of times when people have that, they come home and it's been like, okay, yesterday you're up walking around doing your own laundry and today you're bedridden. And it's not, but it wasn't like that for us. I mean, it was, just this really slow. And then he got to the point where he was falling a lot, not falling, but he couldn't, when he would try to stand transfer, and we're using a gait belt, and he would end up on the floor, and I would have to call the fire department because I couldn't get up by myself. And then we went to the Hoyer, and
Yeah.
then, but
Did you get an electric one or did you get a manual? Or
no, mine's a manual. My right arm is really jacked. Yeah. I said, I'm gonna have to change sides because I'm gonna have this huge Popeye muscle on this side, and this one's gonna be this little weenie arm. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. But yeah. And then
And when did you come to the pool? He swam some or got in
he
the pool?
did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was doing that still when we lived in the big house. He would just
Oh,
go
okay.
and do the walking back and forth. That's the doctor recommended that he did that. And then
Yeah.
as he got weaker, he couldn't do it anymore,
Yeah.
and we even brought the Hoyer to the pool a couple times and had him, and I would put him in the chair, and lower him into the water. But then it got too hard for him to get in and out because he couldn't keep his feet down. And so he would just float, and
Yes.
trying to get him into the chair was a big deal.
Yeah.
When we moved into this house, we had the bathroom redone. So we did a roll-in shower, and then I got him a shower chair, and we just did, all of that,
Right.
the whole thing. Yeah. So he was totally dependent on me by the end. I mean, I cooked all his meals. He had diabetic neuropathy. So that was one of the reasons he couldn't walk, and he couldn't feel his feet. He was numb up to his knees, and
Gotcha.
his hands were numb. And
Mhm.
so we had special tools that we would strap to his hand, but I was cutting up his food like he was a child, and
Mhm.
because he couldn't do any of those things by himself. And so
Did he ever say like how he felt about all of this, or he ever get ticked, or was he just easygoing?
that was one of your questions was the frustration for both of us, because the whole fishing thing. I mean, I have a whole garage full of fishing gear. The kids kind of ransacked it and took what they
Yeah.
wanted. But he used to tie his own flies, and when his hands became so numb, he couldn't do that anymore, and he kept saying, I'm going to fish again. And I just kept all his fishing stuff because I knew that that's what he had, that hope that he was
Yes.
going to be able to, and I didn't want to squash it. And I knew it was never going to happen, but I never said that to him because, it's what kept him going. But a
I
lot
love-
of it was what?
I love you, Anne. That's amazing. You knew enough to do that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, well, you're go fishing again.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And our kids were trying to find places where they had, because there are certain places they have ramps for people in wheelchairs where they can fish. There's one on the Nehalem, there's one at Hague Lake,
Yes.
but Jack wouldn't have been able to hold a pole because he couldn't feel his hands. But Bill was trying to figure out some way that he could lash it to his arm so that he would be
Mhm.
able to fish. But we never got that far because Jack passed away before it got to that point. But yeah, the frustration for him was, and like I would get on his case about his food because being diabetic and dialysis, there are certain things he would tell me, this is all I have left. I like food. I enjoy food, and just stop, because what else do I have left? And I'm like, and when COVID came, that was really hard because we would go to the movies on Tuesdays because it was $5. So
Oh,
we $5 Tuesday, and we would go out to eat a lot. And then when COVID came, couldn't do any of that. And so we just sat here and stared at each other. Although we did have, through the county, we were able to get a home caregiver would come once a week. And she was this little girl, this little Mexican 26-year-old girl, and her and Jack would talk about movies. They'd talk about her boyfriends. They'd talk about, sports, and he enjoyed that time with her. And it gave me 3 hours a week of respite time where I could go grocery shopping or have lunch with my friends or, whatever kind of thing. So that was, yeah. And it
cute.
gave him another face to see, what I mean?
Yes.
Yes.
More
Yeah.
input, like nothing else to talk about. Yeah. Oh, wow. Describe yourself in 5 words.
Okay. One, I would say servant. And I've always kind of felt that way. I mean, Jack
Really?
used to call me the ultimate volunteer, because every time the teacher at school would ask for something, that would be me, And when Bill was, over the years, I did library, I did playground duty, I did a hot lunch, I was the room mom, I corrected the papers for the teachers, and because, Bill went to Emmaus, so the teachers always needed that help, so yeah, and he was there for 9 years. So, and even when Clayton was in school, I, drove the kids on the field trips and, that kind of thing, just, but, I don't know, I would say, I'm hospitality is kind of my thing. I like to entertain. I like to be around people. I like to, I think I would say I'm outgoing. My sister says I'm best friends with the person in line with me at the grocery store by the time we leave every time. And I'm like, well, it's just
My
me.
sister was the same way. I'm like, they're not your friend. No, they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's outgoing.
Yeah. Let's see what else. I think I'm a woman of God. I try to be, and it seems more, since Jack's been gone, I feel more of that pull. And I don't know if it's because maybe I have more time to spend in the word and going to church. Like I felt like I couldn't leave Jack here by himself. And so Sundays were not, because he couldn't be alone. So I felt like I could go to church, and just leave him here. And I tried leaving him here a couple times. I came home and the freezer's open and there's stuff all over the floor and Jack's sitting out here. I'm like, what? I wanted a popsicle. But then he couldn't close the freezer because he's into the wheelchair, right? He couldn't get the door closed and there's food laying on the floor. And I'm like, okay. So we did not do that. Anyway, so I just felt like I couldn't leave him alone. I couldn't trust him not to get into trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he would want to go outside when I wasn't here. And I'm like, no.
Oh.
Just tool around in his power chair outside. I'm like, you can't go on walks without me. I don't trust you to. Well, I mean, and a couple times, like he gets off the sidewalk into the grass and I'm pushing on the chair to get him back on. What would you have done if I wasn't there? It's like, yeah. Anyway, let's see. So how many words is that?
You got servant,
5.
hospitality, outgoing, a woman of God.
I think I'm a family, a family is very important to me. Yeah. I mean,
tell us about the grandkids and what they've been through from birth on. And
so Clayton is married to a woman named Shella, and they have 3 sons. They have twin 10-year-olds and a 7-year-old. And the 7-year-old lost a tooth yesterday. I was so excited. Now he's missing a front tooth in the front. He looks so cute. Clayton is 40 years old. He works for the city of Portland, and his wife is 44, and she works for a company called Protect Solutions. She's a lighting designer,
Oh,
and she makes a lot of money, more than Clayton. And he goes, I'm okay with that.
right.
But she works hard. She works 2 days a week from home, and then 3 days she drives into Tigard to the office.
Wow.
Their boys go.
But when you had the boys when they were little, I mean, didn't they came over, I think, to your house that you have
They
now?
did. Yeah.
So-
Yeah, they did. They were, well, when they were first born, I would have them 2 days a week. I was daycare. And then, because mom and dad both worked full time. And then when they lived in Hillsboro, I would do Thursdays would be my day. And then when they started school, Clayton usually Monday's his day off, but he would always work for overtime. And so I would have the baby, Dylan, and the other two would be in school. So I would have Dylan all day, then I'd go pick the others up from school, and then I'd take them to their house. And then, because Jack had dialysis on Monday. So I would take the kids to their house, and then Clayton, he didn't get home from work like 15 minutes later after school was out. So he'd get me, I'd take him to the house and I'd wait a half hour, and then he would be there, and then I would come home and take Jack to dialysis. And then on Thursdays, I had Dylan again all day, and then Clayton and Sheila, when they would come home from work, they would come to our house and we would all have dinner together.
Oh, nice.
And then they would take the kids home on Thursdays. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then on Fridays, Jack liked the evening dialysis. So his time was like, we'd get there at 5 and it would be from 5 till 9. And on Friday nights, I would go over to Clayton's house, and I'd have pizza with the kids, and we would watch Yellowstone.
Yes, love that show. Who's your favorite character?
Beth.
Oh, clearly. I can't think of those things. Just
I
saying.
haven't watched it for a couple of years. Well, when Jack, because he liked TV, we had all the stuff, and we were paying like $200 and some a month because we had everything. And I just I stopped all that because I'm like, I'm not a big TV watcher. You know, there's certain things I watch. I have Netflix and I have Amazon Prime, and I have Apple TV and Hulu, and but I don't have cable as per se. So I haven't watched them for a couple of years. But anyway, so that was kind of our thing. And then they moved out to Vernonia. And then, like I said, I see them once a week. If like the last Wednesday of the month, there's no school, so I don't go out there. They're coming over for Easter. We still do all the holidays together. We've started doing Christmas out there in Vernonia because Clayton has this huge house. And so now the family thing is in Vernonia for Christmas instead of my house. And that was a little hard the first time because we always did Christmas.
Hospitality.
Well, yeah. And well, just waking up by myself on Christmas morning. That was the first year, because Jack's only been gone a year and a half now. So it hasn't been, it hasn't been 2 years. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It'll be 2 years in July. And so the first Christmas was, I actually went out to Clayton's house and spent the night on the first Christmas. And so I woke up with them on Christmas morning. And then last year, my sister came on Christmas Eve and spent the night with me. And then we went out to Clayton's the next day for Christmas.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then anyway, so the boys, I try to spend, and they still think grandma's cool, which is nice because they're pretty soon, I'm sure they're not going to think I'm so cool. But, I try to make it so that we're still, Jamie, one of the twins, Grandma, you want to play cards with me? Well, of course I do. I'm in the middle of reading a book that I'm really entrenched in, but okay, put the book down, let's play cards, And Dylan, the little one, he's just all over the place. He's the youngest. He's, I call him the loose cannon because he's trying to compete with the older boys, know, and, and he's the little jerk brother, that one. And they fight in the car, and it just drives me nuts. And then he gets all upset because, the big brothers are picking on him. So I try to make like yesterday, I tried to make the situation lighter. He's fighting with Jamie, and I go, well, you're the little brother. You're always going to be the one that gets picked on,
Yeah.
And then I thought he was going to cry. And I'm like, yeah, but just think, you get Levi's coolest sweatshirts when he outgrows them, and you get Jamie's old baseball mitt, and you get, all these things and so then he was happy again. But
Oh, you're such a good grandma. And then you help at school there?
I
with the
do. I
kids?
help at their
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Nice,
And I
nice.
like that. It's fun. It's the kids are really interesting. You wouldn't believe the stuff they tell me. Especially the little kids, the kinders, They
Yeah,
talk about their mom and dad. And I'm like, yeah.
yeah. We were just
Anyway.
we had just retired, and Jordan was in kindergarten. And somebody came up to me, I think it was Mrs. Reichart. She goes, yeah, we heard what you guys do all day. I go, what's that? And he goes, yeah, he always says you guys are sleeping. Because we were so tired. So when he was in kindergarten, we were like, oh my goodness, sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
They
And
tell
then what?
they tell everything.
I know. Yeah. And then Jack and I had Bill. And so Jack was 53 when Bill was born, and I was 38. And so that was, Jack's like, go meet people that are, for Bill to have a play date. And I'm going, they're all 20. It's like, right?
I know.
Because you're an older mom too,
I
right?
was 38. Yes, I
Yeah.
was 38 when I had him. Yeah.
When you had Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but
It was
yeah,
lonely.
I know. And, like, even though Bill has Clayton, but Clayton is 12 years older than Bill.
Yes.
And Mike is like 13 years older than Bill, which is Jack's son from his marriage. So it's like Bill was really an only child, because
Mhm.
by the time he was
Yes.
old enough to interact, they're already gone,
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
but
Yes.
Bill was, he was my shining light. Clayton, growing up, was a really tough teenager. He has attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity to the far end of the spectrum. I mean, when he was a teenager, I would dread, because the school would call me almost every day, we're sending Clayton home because he can't control himself, kind of thing. And it
Yes.
got to the point where he should have had an IEP, which is a special, but
Yes.
he never did, until he got to the point where he was expelled from school for bringing a gun to school. And so, but it was a whole, he had it under the seat in his car. It was a hunting rifle. He'd been out hunting
Yeah.
deer. He was living in Vernonia. And the teacher actually
Right.
called me. He called me and said, it's homecoming bonfire. Can Clayton, he had parked off school property. Can Clayton take his pickup and go pick up they remodeled the town hall. Can he go get all the old wood and bring it back to the school for the bonfire? And I'm like, sure. So he drives onto school property. They're unloading the wood. Some kid sees the gun under the seat, runs in the school. Clayton has a gun, and it was right after the Columbine shooting. And so,
yeah, tough
yeah.
timing.
Yeah. And so they said they could have called the police, but they didn't. And but he was expelled. And at that time he turned 18 in a couple weeks after his expulsion, and he just decided not to go back. He got a job working for Les Schwab, got his GED,
Oh,
got
wow.
his GED, got his millwright, and it took him to where he is now. It was a tough time. But then Bill comes along, and he's this total bright light. Okay, mom, whatever you want, mom. I love you, mom. You can do anything you want, mom, and I'll do anything you tell me to do, mom. He was that kid,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was a totally compliant and just is so easy. And would have other moms call me at high school and say, hey, did Bill tell you that, and I'm like, no. And so I'd go, Bill, oh yeah, it was no big deal. I just went over there and did something else because I didn't want to be involved in all of that. And I'm like,
Wow. Wow.
okay.
So how did you connect with other women when you had Bill later in life?
I went to a indoor play group,
Mm.
and that's where I met Amy Neeson, and I met Dana McGugan. and we met there at the indoor play group, and we just kind of connected, and then they all started talking about Emmaus and all different
Yeah.
things, and that's how we ended up all together. And I'm still friends with, like, tomorrow's my birthday, and Amy and Jen are taking me out to dinner tonight. And
Oh.
so, yeah. And
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, and I met my group I went to Tuolity at the hospital, and they had a new moms group with
Oh,
little
yeah.
babies,
Uh-huh.
and then we graduated to another room that that's where I met Rachel
Rachel Sandage.
and,
Yeah.
and Patty Backus and
Deanna.
several people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a lifeline,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? I'm
Yeah.
glad that you have such a great group of gals that
Yeah.
around,
And we're still, like, all of us from Emmaus. Well, all of our kids are older and graduated from college, and
yeah.
like Bill's going to be 28 the end of May, and we're still all, we're all getting together next weekend for girls, just for dinner,
I
and
love it. I love it
there's-
that you guys do that.
yeah,
That's
Patty
good.
Backus is the only one that, and her situation, and so she hasn't been,
Yeah.
but she did. Her and Kevin came at Christmas, and we all saw Kevin. That was the first time I'd seen him since.
Nice.
Have you seen him since?
I haven't seen him for a while. No,
Well, you knew he had
I haven't seen him.
since
Yeah.
since he had his accident. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no.
that was the first time I'd seen him.
Oh, you mean Patty?
Yeah,
Patty Backus got you.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
so that was the first time. Yeah, got
Oh,
you.
Kevin. Oh, you're talking Kevin Lund. Is that
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
over.
He's actually he's here right now. He's visiting with them.
Awesome.
He's
Awesome.
anyway. Okay.
Let's talk about the top. Oh, what do you do for self-care? I think you're doing jazzercise, you said.
I am. Yeah, I do. I try to go 3 times a week. And then today they had a stretch class, which was great. I loved that. And then they had jazzercise afterward. And what else?
You're very able-bodied then. I mean, you're very able.
Well, you know what? When Jack was, when I was doing all the things with Jack, it took a lot of strength to get him in his chair and the Hoyer,
Yeah.
and even just all the things, turning him over in bed and all those things that he needed. And I didn't want to lose that, because I'm thinking, I'm looking at my sister and other people that aren't as active, and I just see that there's, that they're, as they age, they're not keeping as active as they, and I just look at how Jack was, and I know that his job was really sedentary, and the doctor kept encouraging him to move, and he wouldn't. And then I think that was a huge part of how he ended up where he is, where he ended up. And I don't want to be that person. And so to me, to stay active, to exercise, I know I don't eat as healthy as I should, but I like
Yeah.
food.
It's good self-care. Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
doing a lot of things that are good self-care
Yeah.
for you. Awesome.
Yeah, and I try to stay connected with my friends, and
Mhm.
and I've met some women at Jazzercise, and we do lunch together and stuff like that
Oh,
too. So that's nice.
look
Yeah.
at outgoing thing you are
Yeah.
everywhere you go. Okay,
Yeah.
what are like the top 5 things you would pass on, tips you would pass on to a caregiver? What do you think?
I wrote this down because there were
Okay.
certain things that I thought they needed to know.
Yep.
First thing is to access all the resources that are available to you. Because I know, like, when I first started this Bible study, there was a woman there whose husband was ill, and we kept encouraging her to try to get some outside help, have somebody come and clean your house, have somebody make meals for you. And she refused all that because she, well, I think I can do myself, and I know a lot of caregivers are like that they think they can do it all.
Yeah, you
But
can't.
I say, whatever resources are there, take advantage. I mean, that's a huge thing, is to take advantage of whatever's available to you.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Did you find caregivers coming in at all? I mean, how did you find those people? Did you find anybody to come in as a caregiver?
Yeah. I'm trying to I try to remember how we started that. There was somebody from Washington County came and talked to us. And I can't remember how we made that connection. If maybe it was um, the social worker, they had a social
Mhm.
worker at the dialysis clinic. And
Oh, God.
I think that maybe she was the one that gave me the number of this
Okay.
person.
Okay.
But she came to our house and she just said, um, because of our income was only Social Security, although we own our house, we had investments. Jack had his 401k,
Right.
but that's not considered income. So all they base it on is what your income is. And so, and the need, like Jack was at the top of the scale for need
Yeah.
because he couldn't be left alone. And so, and any prescriptions you have, any insurance you pay, anything like that is deducted off whatever your income is. And if you're in this certain range of income and you're in this certain range of need, then you could qualify for free assistance from the county. And
That is fascinating. That is a great tip.
we qualified. And
Wow.
so we were able 15 hours a month. They gave us for free through Home Instead. And so that's where we met the little Mexican girl with the, like that. And
Yeah.
then I probably shouldn't say this, but I paid her on the side cash
Mhm.
to come and hang out with Jack when I
Sure.
wasn't. Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Access resources. What else?
Be patient, because there's going to be a lot of times when it's going to be hard for both of you, when he's going to be upset and you're just tired and exhausted and weary. And
Yeah.
I think that was my hardest part, was just being weary, because it was a lot. And,
Mhm.
I did it for a long time, and I know that there's people that do it a lot longer than I did, but to just be patient, because, he's going to frustrate you and you're
Mhm.
going to frustrate him. And that's going to be, yeah. And one other thing was to be encouraging, like I was saying about the fishing thing. I know he's never going to be able to fish again, but I'm not going to tell him that.
Yeah.
Just encourage them to keep. And, I know Jack, we talked about depression a lot, and he took drugs for that because, look at your life, this is all there is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to stay connected with your friends and your community. I think don't cut yourself off. I know you can do that so easily. I feel like our friend Patty has done that with her life, with her and her husband, Kevin, that we try to include her. She never comes to any of our stuff. She doesn't, I think I've seen her a couple of times, but
Mhm.
I think that she feels like
It's a
it's a
lot.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know she's still trying to work. So there's that too. Yeah. And then the last thing would be to take time for yourself, make sure you do that. And that was the big thing that all of, like at the dialysis clinic and the Home Instead people and whatever, anybody that we talked to, the nurses that would come. Jack had some home health care nurses, just to make sure that you take care of yourself, because you can't take care of that person if you're not healthy too,
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you had access resources, which was a great thing about the Social Security. That's what they go by. To be patient
I know.
and encouraging. I agree with
Uh,
that. Totally. I agree with all of these, and to stay connected with friends. Did your friends stay around you pretty good?
Yes, they did. And they always invited Jack, to everything. And we did several things. Like let's go out to dinner. We'd go out to dinner with Dwayne and Amy, and Sherry Watson always had, twice a year. They have a really nice place out in the country in Hillsboro. They'd make this paella. They had this huge open pit and they would cook food over it. And twice a year they'd have, and we always went to that. And
Nice.
just, I'm trying to think what else.
You're fortunate. That's good.
Yeah. And we had, like Christmas dinners with all of our friends, and, and then like Amy would come over and she'd just visit with us, and Dwayne and Amy, and on Christmas Eve, we did this for a few years. They'd come over on Christmas Eve and we'd do appetizers and wine, and
Aw.
when Sierra and Bill were like, just in early
Yeah.
college years, and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay, and then to take time for yourself. Those are great tips, Anne.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 best things in your life today? Now,
I'd say my number one thing, is having faith in God. I mean, that's more, I started a Bible study with Patty Lunt, and we've done like several since, since I think when Jack passed away, I want to say like in January of the next year, we started a Bible study, and we've just been continuing. It's morphed into different people and different places, but we're still going. And just, most of the women there, I'm the youngest one. Well, there's one other person younger than me, but
I'm glad
just,
to hear that, because I go, they're really old, and then I go,
well, they're not old, but
I'm really at that age.
but they're, just listening
know.
to their life stories and what they have to contribute is great. I love it. Yeah. And I think number 2 is my kids and grandkids, like they're taking me out to dinner tomorrow, my kids, and Bill is so much more attentive now that Jack is gone, and I think he's just trying to make sure that he knows that I know that he's there for me if I need him,
Wonderful.
And then of course the kids, in Vernonia, and just spending time with them. And spring break, they came and spent the night with me, and so
Wow.
I'm hoping this summer that we can actually have more time, but they're so busy, they do sports, and they, have their friends and all of that. But we've talked about it. I said, it'd be nice if we could get together and go to the beach this summer for a couple days. So
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the third one?
Just having my friends, um, I'm trying to find more things to do right now, because I feel like I have a lot of time. Like Mondays, I go to jazzercise, and then I'm home the rest of the day by myself. And how many times can I clean my house and I don't have any dirty laundry. I don't, what I mean? It's like, what am I going to do all day? I can sit here and watch TV, or I can, so I'm just trying to, and I have been volunteering at Valley Art. I do that a couple days a month.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Just, sitting there. If people want to come in and buy stuff, I sell it to them, that kind of thing. But, just,
do you have creative things you like to do, or it's a lot of the things you're doing are with people, so that's probably your sweet spot.
Yeah, I like to read. I do some reading, and I've joined a book club, but we only meet once a month. And so and it's funny because Patty Lynn's in there with me too, and everyone else is in their 30s, and then there's me and Patty. Right. And I'm going to be 66 tomorrow. And I think Patty said she's 72, and all the other girls are probably in their 30s, and so, but some of the books they choose are not something that I would read, you know what I mean? Because they're, have a lot.
What's a book you've read lately? Do you remember?
Well, the last one we read was actually the book club thing, and it was, The Things I Never Told You, and it's by a Chinese author, and I can't think of her name. It's her last name is like NG, but it's let's see if I have it right here on my phone. Let's see.
The Things I Never Told You.
Is that what it's called? Something, let me look at my Kindle, I can tell you for sure. That's not it.
I love your top 3 things. That one is faith in God, your kids and grandkids. That gives you just light,
Yeah,
really.
it does. They're really my light. Yeah.
And friends. That's good. Did you find it?
Everything I Never Told You.
Oh, Everything I Never Told You. Okay.
And her first name is Celeste, and her last name is NG.
Okay.
But it's an older book, but it's about this man. The man is Chinese, and he's married to a woman that's white, and they have 3 kids, and the middle daughter ends up, they find her at the bottom of a lake. And
wow.
it's just the family, and it goes back and it talks about when they first met and the racial things they have to deal with, because when the girl dies, she's 16 and it's 1977 at that time. So the parents
Gotcha.
were dealing with the, and the way that they're treated because of their, thing, and what happened to the girl and what happens to the other kids in the family. And, it's a lot of, it was really interesting to me to just
Yeah.
hear
You
each
get
of
out
them.
of your, you get out of your genre a little bit, in a
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
what are we
Well, I like to read romantic comedies, that's kind of my thing. Yeah. Fun,
Okay. I
but
press myself to get out of nonfiction because I love nonfiction.
yeah,
And and so I really I make myself read fiction sometimes.
yeah,
So
yeah. I don't read very much nonfiction. Yeah. I have, but some biographies and stuff, but you know, yeah, but I do like to read, and I do read a lot, and that's
nice.
kind of my thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you
So,
so much, Anne. This has been awesome.
okay.
Thank you for being so transparent and
Oh,
sharing.
sure.
So we've learned a lot from you.
Okay. Thank
for
you.
helping.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. I'll see
Okay.
you later.
Okay. Bye.